Good morning. For your children here, Tiffany Boyd. I am sleepy this morning, so I have my coffee with me, so you'll have to forgive me while I drink my coffee while we do this live. I'm going to be bringing on a guest in just a few minutes. Her name is Stephanie Seabolt, and she lives in North Carolina. So today, the reason why I wanted to do this live, Stephanie and I did, is because there is currently legislation that has been introduced in North Carolina that seeks to threaten homeschool freedoms. And so obviously we want to educate as many people as possible that live in North Carolina. But as I posted over on the For Your Children Facebook page this morning, why should you be concerned if you don't live in North Carolina about legislation? Because what we see happening is what typically happens in one portion of the nation eventually affects the rest of the nation. So I would encourage you to keep apprised of what's going on in other states that involve homeschool legislation or legislation that seeks to threaten homeschooling or private schooling, because when you're speaking to your legislators in your state and they have introduced legislation that's threatening, like we have dealt with here in Tennessee, you can use other states and what has happened in other states as examples to try to educate them on why these initiatives are not good. Because what we're seeing is a lot of this legislation, I would even venture to say most of this legislation seems to be being sponsored and introduced by conservative lawmakers. So that's concerning, and we need to make sure that we take the time to educate them as much as possible. I think I just had someone, you'll have to excuse the interruptions. I'm filming this on my phone, so someone just tried to call. Hope that didn't disturb anyone. So let's see. Stephanie, are you on yet? Once I see you in the thread, I can bring you on the video and have you join us. And what I'm going to be doing here is I'm reading from my computer because I have the bills. Stephanie sent me the bills this morning, so I have the exact bills that have been introduced. So you're going to see me look away because I'm reading from my desktop here as we're filming. But I am going to give you a breakdown, a brief synopsis of each one, and then when Stephanie jumps on, we can go into detail about all of this. So there are 5 bills in the state legislature that will affect the North Carolina homeschool community if passed, and I'm actually reading from NCHE's website, and it is their legislative update. So the first bill is Senate Bill 411. Students in homeschool can take the PSAT or the AP. Now, Stephanie has told me previously that she doesn't have a lot of concerns about this particular bill, but the others are very concerning. This one was initiated by NCHE. It's Senate Bill 411, and it will allow homeschool students to sit for the PSAT and AP exams in public high schools. Homeschools will pay for the exams, and homeschool teachers may be required to help if adding homeschool students reduces the proctor to student ratio below the minimum required. So it's saying that the bill passed the second and third reading on the Senate floor and crossed over to the House, and it's been assigned to the Committee on Rules, Calendar, and Operations of the House. So Stephanie had said that she's not really concerned. She doesn't have many concerns about this one, but the other 4 she does. So the next one is House Bill 800. Public school part-time enrollment. So you can probably already see where this one's going. We saw something similar to this in Tennessee with the bill that we were fighting when it was first introduced. This bill will allow non-public school students, both homeschool and private school students, to take classes in public schools, in local school administrative units, and charter schools. Another reason why, okay, here comes Stephanie. Try it again, Stephanie. It says you can't join the broadcast. Okay, let's see here. Approve. Unable to add guests. They can't join your broadcast at this time. What's going on here? You might have to... Okay, everything is set up on my end. It's saying... All right, let me see if I can send you an invite. Allow viewers to request to join you on video. Approve. Okay. Your audience is set to public, so anyone can watch this live broadcast. Send invite. It's saying it's unable to allow you to join. What's going on here? Okay. See if you can try it again, Stephanie. Come on, Facebook. All right. Off. It's not, it won't let you for some reason. Okay, we might have to log out here, Stephanie, and try it again. I'm not sure why it won't let you on. I've made the powers that be angry. Well, if you haven't made them if you've made them angry yet, then they should be really angry at me. So let me go ahead while I'm on here and go ahead and give a rundown of these bills, and then we'll try it again. So House Bill 800 will allow non-public school students, both homeschool and private school students, to take classes in public schools, in local school administrative units, and charter schools. Another reason why I'm opposed to charter schools. There are more than 30 school districts that are promoting dual enrollment, in homeschools and public schools. However, there has been disagreement among different state agencies as to if this is legal. If passed, this bill would clarify that it is clearly legal for a student to be enrolled in both public and homeschool classes. So this bill right here is blurring the lines between homeschooling and private schooling and public schooling. I feel like this is an attempt to try to get those homeschool students and private school students money from those students, okay, because they want them in their seats. And there's other issues with that as well. But it says, as it's presently worded, there is no limit on the number of classes a homeschool student may take in public schools, so students could take a full load in public schools and receive no instruction in homeschools. Also, this bill would apply to K through 12 students. Okay, if you're a homeschool child and you're enrolled in public schools, then you're not a homeschool child. You're a public school student. So that bill right there, House Bill 800, is definitely blurring the lines, in my opinion, between private schooling and homeschooling and public schooling. So House Bill 800 is definitely not a good bill. House Bill 420, expand and consolidate K-12 scholarships. Currently, the ESA program is available to meet the needs of students with disabilities. Private schools and homeschools can apply for this program. It's designed to cover expenses such as speech therapy, tutoring services, and educational technology. Families with students in this program can order curriculum, education therapy, and education technology. Supplies and tuition from a state-approved service provider or from an online marketplace managed by North Carolina. House Bill 420 will expand ESA to non-public students, including homeschool students, that don't have an IEP issued by the local school district. The way this program is structured gives a lot of control to the state on how the families spend the money. Okay, this one right here. Homeschool families, do not enroll yourselves in programs where the government is giving you money, because it says it right here. The way this program is structured gives a lot of control to the state, that's the government, on how the families spend the money. Now, I've said this over and over again. Homeschoolers, when you accept government funding, they are going to run your homeschool. So even if you have a student with disabilities, it's a bad idea to accept or enroll yourself in any kind of program that will provide you with money from the government, because as my key phrase states, what the government funds, it runs. That's House Bill 420. Senate Bill 665 adds homeschools to Opportunity Scholarship. Since 2014, the Opportunity Scholarship Program has provided private school vouchers to children of low-income households. The average voucher value is about $2,800. Okay, well, I'm going to stop right there because $2,800 would not cover the entire tuition at a private school. There's no way. So that's one of the issues that I have when they start talking about vouchers to attend private schools, because the problem with that is children that really can't afford private schools are not going to be able to come up with the shortfall. Because if private school tuition, the private schools here, for instance, in our area, you're looking at anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000 a year or upwards. So if the state or the government gives them $2,800, how are they going to come up with the rest of the money to cover the tuition at that particular private school? So the kids that are truly disadvantaged are not benefiting from voucher programs, because there's no way for them to come up with the rest of the money that it would take for them to be able to attend that particular private school. So it says, this bill would add homeschool students to the mix. Of course it would, because what they're trying to do is dangle that carrot in front of the homeschool community to try to get them to accept these government initiatives so that then they will be able to tell you and dictate to you how you can homeschool your children. It would award a voucher in the amount of up to $1,000 for homeschool students in the next school year. The amount of the voucher would increase each successive until the 2026-27 school year, when the maximum voucher amount would equal 45% of the average state per pupil allocation for public schools. Senate Bill 645 is the same as Senate Bill 665. This bill has no regulation to report how this money is spent. It is a reasonable expectation that there should be an accounting of how taxpayer funds are spent, and good governance dictates that the state will eventually implement more oversight regulations. Okay, so that one right there, with the government funds it runs, they give you money, they're going to demand accountability as to how it is spent. And I've seen this actually happening in other states. That's why I said, as homeschoolers, we need to make sure that we're educated about what's going on in other states. A recurring theme that I keep seeing when the state is trying to give you money to educate your child, then they want to come in and say, well, you're going to be subject to audits. So if you spend this money in the way that the state, your family is going to be subject to audits, okay? So if that family isn't spending that money the way the state sees fit, then you could be prosecuted. So again, with the government funds it runs, all of these initiatives are a trap. Okay, they're trying to convince homeschool families to allow the government into their kitchen to have a seat at their dinner table. And so homeschool families have to understand that all these initiatives come with oversight and they come with strings. House Bill 746. Oh, this is a good one. Oversight of homeschools. This bill will add more regulation to homeschools. And by July 1st of each school year, a new notice of intent to operate a homeschool will be required. This bill has been referred to the Committee on Rules, Calendar, and Operations of the House. So they went straight to the jugular on that one. House Bill 746, Oversight of Homeschools. Okay, so I'm reading on NCHE's website all of this information to you. And I'm going to take a harder stance than even they have. If I lived in North Carolina, I would be calling my lawmakers and telling them that I oppose House Bill 800, House Bill 420, Senate Bill 665, House Bill 746, that I am not in agreement to any of these, none of these, because they all seek to destroy homeschool freedoms, in my opinion. Now, Stephanie sent me, this was just a synopsis of these bills, and then Stephanie sent me in a link the actual wording of each bill. Let me see. Let's try this again, Stephanie. Yes, that's right. No. Regulation. That's right. Okay. See if you, I can't send you a request, Stephanie, so see if you can send a request to join the video again. I don't know why it won't let you join. It's giving me options. Let's see. All right. Here you come. Approve. And then it's having me send you an invite, and it will not let me add you for whatever reason. And all of my settings are, okay. I'm gonna, all right, I X'd you out. Allow viewers request to join. Okay, that's on. For some reason, Facebook's not cooperating. Let's see. And it's only showing my viewers as Christina and George. But I see up at the top that 4 people are on here. So it's not even showing you as a viewer, Stephanie. Maybe, do you have some of your settings set where I can't see you as a viewer? Oh, and Stephanie was a guest on the Free Your Children radio show last night. Her show aired. So when that show is added to Spotify, I will drop the link to her show in the comments of this video and over on my Free Your Children page. So if you missed it, you'll have a chance to listen to what she had to say. Stephanie is a resident of North Carolina. Okay, now I see you up there. Yeah, check your settings and that might allow you to come on. Stephanie lives in North Carolina, so she is one of the many homeschool families in North Carolina that these bills would be affecting. And again, she was a guest on the Free Your Children radio show last night. And then we knew that when her show recorded, we knew that legislation would likely be coming down the pike, but all of this had not developed yet. And today, if you're accessing this video at a different time, today's date is April the 28th, 2023. Because I'm also the admin over on the Homeschool Freedom Fighters group. And so I shared an article there. I've also shared it on my Free Your Children page as well. And there was some discussion in that particular group about the article not being correct. The person that had written the article was warning about school choice, and they were referencing certain states and legislation that had been brought to the table in certain states and why it was threatening to homeschooling, okay? And there was some discussion in that particular group that the information was wrong. Well, I want to clarify something. When you pen a piece or when you write an article and legislation has just been introduced, that changes. Just like in Tennessee, House Bill 1214, it changed rapidly. So when a piece is penned and then it's published, it's going to be likely that the original wording of that bill is going to be changed, that the bill could be killed, or it could be, the number could change. Lots of different things could happen. It doesn't mean the information is incorrect. It means at the time of penning, yes, it was that article, George. And it was a fantastic article. So it doesn't mean that the information is correct. It just means that the legislation has moved and changed and has gone through the legislative process. The same thing happened in Tennessee. HB 1214 changed as it went through the process. And so that was a discussion that we had there. And also that article explicitly stated in the one particular state this person was talking about, the original bill. So the author of that article was referencing the original bill. So, and the original bills are changed sometimes if they get pushback from the public, they amend them. That's why you will hear me say over and over again, wording is easily amended. Once you allow the Trojan horse into the room, then that wording can be easily amended to come with more strings, more overreach, more mandates, more regulations. So that's why you don't ever want to let it in to begin with. So even if they have, you'll hear this a lot, even if they have good intentions, or even if those lawmakers think it's a really good bill because X, Y, and Z, you have to think long term when you're considering legislation and the unintended implications that legislation can bring. This is a reoccurring conversation I have had with some of our lawmakers over and over again. So this legislation that we have just spoken about here, I would be, if I lived in North Carolina, I would be on the phone, sending emails, calling them, scheduling appointments to go and see them. And when Stephanie gets on here, because I don't know, I'm going to have to pull up the actual bills, which I'll do in a moment. But I'm wondering, I would venture to take a guess that this legislation has been introduced by conservative lawmakers. And why conservatives are trying to saddle this state, and it's not just in North Carolina, so I'm not just picking on North Carolina. It's happened here in Tennessee as well. I'm seeing it all across the nation. Why are conservatives and liberty-loving lawmakers trying to saddle homeschool parents and private school parents with legislation that's going to steal their freedoms, destroy their freedoms? The connecting of the dots doesn't seem to be there for a lot of individuals that are passing laws and making decisions for homeschool families. Stephanie, have you figured anything out on your end? And it might just be that Facebook doesn't like us today and won't let you to come on. Someone just said, what's happening? We are discussing legislation. Let me see if I can click on your name, Stephanie. No, it's just giving me like, reply, ban, and suspend. So let's see. See if you can add another request to join, and we'll try to add you again. What we're doing here, if you just tuned in, is Stephanie Seabolt was a guest on my Free Your Children radio show last night. She lives in North Carolina. And there is legislation that has been introduced. Sorry, the video was skipping. Weird. Is anyone else having trouble listening to the video or hearing what I'm saying here? We have good weather here today, so we shouldn't be having technical difficulties. Anyone else? Can the rest of you hear me okay? Have you been able to hear the video? Okay. She says she had to sign out and sign back in. Anyone else have trouble? You're fine now. Okay, that's good. So, Martha, what I was saying is Stephanie lives in North Carolina, and there's legislation that has been introduced. George says audio and video are fine on his end. Legislation has been introduced in North Carolina that threatens the freedoms of homeschool families and private school parents in North Carolina. So we were going over that legislation, and Stephanie can't be added to the video. Facebook will not let her on for some reason. It keeps saying that she's unavailable to be added to the video. But all of my settings are turned on, so I don't know why it's... And Stephanie lives in North Carolina, so I wanted her to be able to join us so that we could discuss this. Stephanie said, and I was reading from NCHE. This NCHE is probably, Stephanie, if you're on here, correct me if I'm wrong. This is your state homeschool group, correct? North Carolina Home Education Association, NCHE. That's where I'm reading from. This is just a brief synopsis of all the bills, Martha. And this is a page, it's their legislative update from their website. And so I was sharing that. So there are 5 pieces of legislation that have been introduced. The first one, Senate Bill 411, doesn't seem, Stephanie says, to concern her all that much. Just send another join request. Yes, they're the only statewide one we have. So NCHE is North Carolina's state homeschool association. And so they issued this legislative alert. And there's five bills, there's 5 pieces here that are of concern. The first one, not so much. This bill was actually initiated by the North Carolina Homeschool Association, which is to allow homeschool students to sit for the PSAT and the AP exams in public high schools. So Stephanie had shared with me she didn't have very many concerns about that one. However, the other 4 are horrible. The next one is House Bill 800, and it allows public school part-time enrollment. So essentially what they're wanting to do is to allow non-public school students, homeschoolers, and private school students to come in and take classes in the public school system. And there's no limit on the number of classes a homeschool student may take in public schools, so they could take a full load in public schools and receive no instruction in homeschools. So what that would mean is a homeschool student would essentially become a public school student. And I guess the same would apply to private school students if they were just coming in to take classes in the public high school. So NCHEA is saying on their legislative update that they are opposed to this bill as it's currently worded. I would be opposed to the bill if I were a parent in North Carolina regardless. Then House Bill 420, expand and consolidate K-12 scholarships. All that's doing is they're trying to entice parents that have children with disabilities, private school parents, and homeschool parents. They're trying to entice them with an ESA to try to get them back up underneath the public school umbrella. So it says it's designed to cover expenses such as speech therapy, tutoring services, and educational technology. Families with students in this program can order curriculum, education therapy, education technology, supplies, and tuition from a state-approved service provider or from an online marketplace managed by North Carolina. Okay, so they're saying, NCHEA says, while NCHE favors the continued support and increased funding of homeschool and private school students with disabilities, we are not in favor of making state funding available to homeschool students who don't have disabilities. So I guess they are in favor of children with, homeschool children with disabilities getting state funding. Personally, I do not agree with that. That's my personal stance. Just send another request. Yes, they're the, okay, I already read that. Let's see. I'm not getting your request. Didn't come through. Oh, man. Come on, Facebook. Let her on. So, I caution any homeschool family, no matter if you have a child with disabilities, no matter if you have a child with special needs, not to accept government funding because that money always comes with strings. Okay, let's see. I got it. Now, let's see. If they accept, they can join on video or with audio only. Your audience is set to public, so anyone can watch this live broadcast. So then it won't let you do it, Stephanie. It just directs me to send you an invite. Now, I'm going to try to send you an invite, so you're popping up again. Guest requests. Nope, you disappeared again. And it's not showing you as a viewer, Stephanie, in my feed. So, Martha, getting back to you, House Bill 420 expands and consolidates K through 12 scholarships in North Carolina. Then there's Senate Bill 665, which adds homeschools to the Opportunity Scholarship Program. It's a voucher program. Everyone that's followed me for any length of time knows I'm not a fan of school choice in any form. Certainly not vouchers. They're wanting to give homeschoolers money in the form of a voucher and continually increase that funding. And then, of course, the there's going to be a reasonable expectation that the state is going to dictate to you how that money is spent. No kidding. It's happened all over the nation. Then it says at the bottom, while NCHE opposes government funding for homeschools, we would welcome a non-refundable tax credit bill similar to child tax credits that specifies exactly what information homeschool families must provide on their tax forms to receive the credit. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and say this now because I know that HSLDA, I believe, is in favor of tax credits. I am not in favor of tax credits. I'm not in favor of any kind of boomerang money because I know that and there's been articles written on that as well, and I can share those resources because I feel like any kind of boomerang money is going to come with strings. What I would prefer to see happen is tax reform, in that if your children do not participate in the government school system, they don't get your money to begin with. Then they're not giving it back to you. Then you keep it and you can spend it how you see fit. So that is the only thing that I would be in favor of, is the government not taking that money to begin with out of the hands of those that are not participating in the government school system. So that's Senate Bill 665, which wants to give vouchers to homeschoolers. Then there's House Bill 746, and it just simply states, oversight of homeschools. This bill will add more regulation to homeschools. And by July 1st of each school year, a new notice of intent to operate a homeschool will be required. NCHEA opposes this bill, as it does any bill that adds regulations to homeschools. At this point, it doesn't look like this will be successful, and we expect it to die in committee. So the problem is it should have never been introduced. So I would like to know, I don't think that Stephanie's going to be able to jump on here. She can't get it to work either, and it's just denying her access from my end. Someone sent a message, and I'm trying to go back and read it. Oh, what happened was there's been such a move to homeschool because everybody, see what public schools were doing. Yes, that is, yeah. So a lot of children have been removed from the system. And one of the reasons for that was because when the schools shut down, the children came home and the parents actually got to see what was going on, what their children were being taught. And homeschooling has increased. It used to be at a rate of 2 to 3%. Now it's jumped up to 20%. It's a desperate grab and an attempt to keep the thumb on as many of those children as possible. Of course, they're losing money because those children are no longer in the seats. But there's also a lot of other, it is about the money. It's always about the money, but it's also about control. So that's another reason why. And there's also a huge push to globalize education across the world. But you're seeing all of this legislation being introduced, and it's coming wrapped up in a cute little package called school choice. The money follows the child. But so many people, I'm in another group in Tennessee, and it's supposed to be a liberty group, and there are so many deceived individuals that believe that this empowers parents. This is not an initiative. School choice is not an initiative that empowers parents or gives parents control. It is the exact opposite of that. It destroys true private education, and then the government controls all forms of education. And, you know, this one person, at least, I will have to give him credit, asked for resources because, you know, he was trying to disagree with what I was saying. And I sent him a plethora, like 39 different articles, things to listen to about why school choice is dangerous to homeschools and private schools and why it is a global initiative. People do not know. A lot of our lawmakers don't know. And the reason why is because this has been pitched to them. A lot of them have not done the research. They've just jumped on board and went with what they've been told, and then they peddle it. We have to change this. We have to educate our lawmakers because I would venture to say the vast majority of them have no clue what this really is. and the roots of this and where it's coming from and what the initiative really is trying to accomplish. So North Carolina, this is not good. Stephanie, if you're on here, when does your legislative session end? Because this, well, there's no date on this particular NCHE legislative update that I'm looking at. In Tennessee, ours has already ended. So how much longer is your legislature in session in North Carolina, Stephanie? So again, while I'm waiting on her to respond to that, House Bill 800, House Bill 420, Senate Bill 665, House Bill 746 in North Carolina are all threats to homeschool freedoms and private school freedoms. If you live in North Carolina, if you know someone that lives in North Carolina, you need to share this information with them. You need to encourage them to contact their legislators and tell them to kill these bills, that they oppose these bills. You need to start educating as many people as possible about why none of this is good legislation for the homeschool community in North Carolina. And if you don't live in North Carolina, you need to listen to all the updates and read all the articles that you can about what's going on in other states, because it eventually bleeds over. Something that happens in one state's eventually going to bleed over and affect others. Looks like the press conference is scheduled for May the 9th. So is that when the session ends, Stephanie? Ours is done. I expect that they're going to be headed into a summer study session, but the regular session is over with. So is the press conference like the end of the session for North Carolina? This would have been much easier if you could have jumped on the video with us and we could have spoken to you in live time. But for whatever reason, it won't allow you to come on. She said, best I can tell, that will be the end of the session. That's when they'll talk about all that they've done. Okay, so Stephanie, for our followers on Free Your Children and people that are accessing this video, what are the homeschool laws in North Carolina? What do you have to do in North Carolina to be legal to homeschool currently, right now? And she'll answer. She has to type it all out because she can't get on the live. That's so frustrating. So, like I said, in Tennessee, and Alabama's dealing with this too. I just did a live the other day with Alabama and the Price Act. So if you live in Alabama, there's legislation floating around out there that seeks to threaten homeschool freedoms, and it will blur the lines between homeschooling and public schooling, or private schooling and public schooling. Again, that's a direct threat to homeschool freedoms in the state of Alabama. And private schools too. When you start blurring lines, all kinds of issues develop with this. And this isn't the first time there's been issues in Alabama with conservative reps trying to destroy homeschool freedoms. So Alabama parents, if you live in Alabama, you need to start educating your lawmakers. You need to start reaching out. Same thing. This is why I'm saying all of us all homeschoolers need to keep apprised of what's going on, because we have to be a united, active force to be able to even attempt to combat this. Okay, so if you're a homeschooler in North Carolina, Stephanie is saying you have to submit a notice of intent with proof of at least a GED. Is that it, Stephanie? Get your approval email from the state and then withdraw your children. Do nothing with the state until the age of 7. Test your kids ages 7 and up once a year. And then if you look at the NCHE legislative page, House Bill 746 wants to add more regulations to homeschools. So keep your annual test results, attendance sheet, and proof of vaccine or exemption on file. So, Stephanie, clarify this for me. So every single homeschooler in North Carolina is required to test their kids ages 7 and up once a year? Because if you're a homeschooler in North Carolina and that is indeed, oh my goodness, Stephanie, I'm so sorry. Okay, so homeschoolers in North Carolina, you need to be contacting your lawmakers and tell them if they want to write legislation for homeschoolers, they need to rewrite their homeschool laws and start getting that testing demand out of there. Come on, conservative lawmakers in North Carolina, what are you doing? If you want to propose legislation, do something right. All right. And I'm not just fussing on North Carolina. Tennessee needs to make some changes as well. I'm not happy with what's on our books in Tennessee either. The government is not in charge of your children. We don't even give them the names and birth dates of each kid, just the age and whether they're boys or girls. The thing about all of these pieces of legislation is the fact that the state, and there's been a lot of chatter on this, especially after Biden released a statement about who children belong to. I think a lot of parents have lost sight that the children belong, God gives children to parents. The state doesn't own your children. The government has no authority to tell you how to parent your children, and parents are going to have to reclaim their rightful place in the lives of their children. And one way to do that is to get them out of a system that seeks to destroy the God-given rights of parents. But even homeschool families and private school families, as you can see, are a target. So we have to make it clear to our lawmakers that we're not going to tolerate this type of overreach. We don't have a single true conservative in office in North Carolina with the exception of Mark Robinson. We have a bunch of rhinos. Well, that seems to be an issue everywhere. And again, I'm in a lot of different political groups on Facebook and social media, not just Facebook. And so what I see is it's not just rhinos. People, I think, consider rhinos like Democrats that have slipped into the Republican Party and they promote liberal ideals. But there's also a big, huge issue with people that claim to be conservative, and they claim to be ultra-conservative. They claim to be a patriot. They claim to be liberty-loving. You'll hear all these terms tossed around. These individuals are some of the ones that are peddling school choice the hardest. And so all of their other stances that they take are true conservative stances and probably ultra-conservative stances. But then they're all over this school choice initiative and they're pushing it and ramming it down people's throats, and they're not educated on it. They do not understand what it is. They don't understand, and they don't want to listen. And they don't want to hear what this really entails and what the roots of this are. So we're going to have to try to educate those people to get them to understand that school choice is not liberty loving. It's not liberty minded. It's not set to empower parents or to allow parents to have more choice. It actually destroys choice, because when the government is funding every single kind of education, there is no choice. The government is in control of it all. And then I hear this over and over again. I had a big discussion about this, but it's my money. That's my money. I pay taxes. That's my money. Newsflash, once you pay taxes and that money goes over into the government pot, it's no longer your money. I've said this over and over again. When you pay money in the form of taxes, you're paying to live in a community, whether you agree with it or not. I'm mad right now that our city taxes and our county taxes went up on our property, and now it is absolutely outrageous here in Middle Tennessee. It's just sickening to see what's happening with that. I mean, ours like doubled, which is crazy, but we have to pay taxes because we live here. And all these people are demanding their tax money back. Well, they can't connect the dots that when the government gives you money back, that it comes with strings attached to it. Here's the thing. We have lived in our current home, I think almost 23 years now. We have never had a fire in our home. Well, I've never at the end of the year called the fire department and demanded my money back. I drive on roads, but I don't drive on all the roads in our county. I haven't called our county highway department and demanded the money back that I paid to maintain those roads that I haven't driven on. That's not how it works. Once you pay money into the government in the form of taxes, it is no longer your money. And if they give that money back to you, it's going to come with strings. You can look at all the legislation that's been introduced, and it always comes with strings. Always. And so all these pieces of legislation that you're seeing is a result of that. So everything we've been warning about is coming to fruition across the nation. You'll see it ramp up every time the legislatures are in session across the nation. I mean, this will continue to happen because far too many conservatives are peddling these false ideas of freedom. And until we educate them, I'm just concerned that the Trojan horse has already been let into the room. I know it has in Tennessee. And it's only going to get worse as far as the goal is to try to destroy homeschooling and private schools. That's the goal. No matter if they try to tell you it isn't or not, that is the goal. And they were warning about it in the 80s and no one listened. And it's happening. And you will see lots of things happening in the near future as they ramp up their agenda. And they've been public about their plans, so I don't know why anyone's so surprised. If you would study it and research the history of it, it's right there in black and white. Okay, Stephanie, I'm going to try again and see if I can get you on here. All right, I sent you an invite, Stephanie. Oh, it's letting you come on. It's a miracle. Hallelujah. It says it's adding you. We did it. Are you there?
Yep.
Yay! Yay, yay, yay. Hold on. Let me turn my volume up on my phone. See, it wasn't me. It was Facebook.
It was Facebook.
Can you turn your volume up?
All right. That's as loud as it'll go.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can everyone hear Stephanie? If you're watching this video, let us know if you can hear Stephanie. Stephanie, since you're on, I'm going to let you live in North Carolina. So this will directly affect your family if some of these horrible pieces of legislation move forward. So explain to our listeners why you're concerned about these pieces of legislation.
Okay. So the only one that doesn't bother me, like you said, is 411, which is letting homeschoolers go in to take the PSAT and AP end of course tests at a public or private school. That one, no big deal, because we're going to have to pay for it if we go in there to take the test anyway. 800, if your kid goes in and takes 3 classes, the school is on day 1, it's either day 1 or day 10, going to get 1/3 of the $10,700 plus that they get for a regular public school student. Mm-hmm. That school gets 1/3 of that money for your homeschool child being there every single day. Under this bill, a kindergarten student doesn't need to dual enroll. That's ridiculous. It's basically parents that have said, hey, we want babysitting, but we want to be called homeschoolers.
And this is the one, which one? This is 800?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm reading here on NCHE, it says, as it's presently worded, there's no limit on the number of classes homeschool students may take. So they can be there all day.
Yep.
And so they're still going to be and they still would be considered a homeschool student, even though they're receiving no instruction in homeschooling.
Yep. If it's let's just say a middle school or high schooler, if the school is on a regular schedule, they would be there for they would be taking 6 or 7 classes a day. Block schedule would take, the way that one works, if I remember correctly, they take 4 classes a semester and they get everything for that class in that semester. And then the next semester they take 4 more classes. So they're there all day long. And kindergarten, K through 6 or K through 5, they wouldn't be able to split it up and take just certain classes. It would be your kid is there all day long.
So this is definitely blurring the lines between private schooling and homeschooling and public schooling. So, yeah, that's crazy. Nothing surprises me anymore, but that one is like really over the top.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. So, House Bill 420. This is the one that wants to give homeschool parents and private school families money for students with disabilities.
So 420, we already have, if your child has an IEP, the individualized education plan, and they have to have been a public school student and leaving within the last year. They can apply for that the ESA scholarship money. Anybody who hasn't been a public school student and withdrawn within the last year, they aren't eligible to apply. There are so many strings with the current ESA plus money. It's not, there is, used to be, you could go online and find a list of vendors. You can't do that now because you're not getting that reimbursement money now. You are paying for everything through what they're calling class wallet, and that much there, you can't use Christian curriculum.
Right.
There's only certain vendors that will accept it. There's actually a company called the Old Schoolhouse who was when Arizona passed their version of the school choice funding. The Old Schoolhouse, their curriculum arm called Schoolhouse Teachers, was on that approved vendor list.
Right.
They're supposed to be anti-school choice as far as publishers go, but they were happy because they got approved to be a vendor.
Right.
Those homeschoolers in Arizona are no longer, when they sign on the dotted line saying they'll take that money, they're not considered homeschoolers anymore.
Wow. Yeah. So see, these are all the unintended, well, they're not unintended for the government, but these are the unintended consequences that parents might not necessarily be thinking about and seeing the big picture with these initiatives. And that's why it's important to have these discussions, because we have to educate the public. So Senate Bill 665 adds homeschools to Opportunity Scholarship. You already know what I'm going to say about this.
No,
You already know what I'm going to say about this one. So giving vouchers to private school children and homeschool students. Talk to us about that.
So it's basically the same as the Bill 420. They say they're going to give you money and you can use it to pay for what you need for your homeschool. It's going to have the same kind of stipulations where they're going to say whether what you're trying to pay for is approved or not.
Right.
Because they're not going to just mail you a check. It's more than likely going to go through Class Wallet. And certain people accept that and certain people don't. And
I'm seeing that the sponsors of these bills, and they're lumping together 420, 665, and 645, and they're, NCHE is trying to be diplomatic and kind, and so they're saying the sponsors of these bills, 420, 665, and 645, are all well-meaning and want to help homeschool families. However, NCHE opposes these bills. Okay, I'm not going to be as nice as NCHE, okay?
I'm not.
And I'm going to say that these are not help. I believe that there's way more nefarious intentions behind a lot of these bills than what meets the eye. Especially a bill like, and they didn't mention this one, they didn't lump in House Bill 746 to that one. But I will say that any bill, any piece of legislation that seeks to blur the lines between homeschooling and private schooling and public school is not well-meaning.
Yep.
Any piece of legislation that is trying to dangle the carrot of money to homeschool families and private school families is not well-meaning. I feel like they have a reason to want to get their hands on homeschool parents and private school parents. And I encourage parents in North Carolina to really do some deep diving into those scenarios.
Oh, and the big kicker is Representative Chesser, who is one of the primary sponsors of 800, the part-time enrollment bill.
Mm-hmm.
A staffer on the phone the other day. Of course, they were in meetings or whatever. Chesser is a homeschool dad.
Wow. And
yeah.
He sponsored which bill?
He sponsored 800, the part-time enrollment bill.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow.
Yep.
So why you have a chance to speak to him yet? Have you had
I've gotten a call back from John Hardister, who didn't know he's on with 411, the one for not 411, he's on with 420, I believe, for the scholarships.
Okay.
It may be 411. I'll have to go back and look. He's the Republican House Whip who is in Guilford County, where I'm at, and he called me yesterday morning on the phone, and he says he is completely for school choice and was doing his best to get me off the phone as quick as he could, and I wouldn't let him. But
I've had that experience as well.
One that I spoke with in person. Nobody else will return phone calls. Nobody else will return emails. Nothing.
Let me ask you this. Are all of these bills being sponsored by conservatives, Republicans?
No, 746 is sponsored. The oversight of homeschools bill is sponsored solely by Democrats.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
When I was looking at the bills, that would have been my guess, that one, the one that just blatantly says oversight of homeschools, that sounds like something that a Democrat would propose. The others scream conservative Republican legislation. So, and this is the thing, guys. Our conservative lawmakers have to be educated whether they want to be or not. And the only way that we're going to be able to do that is to completely flood them with information. So if you're calling your reps in North Carolina and they're not answering the phone and they're not responding to email, I would make an appointment and I would go speak to them in person. I would demand accountability for legislation that they bring to the forefront. I would make my voice loud on all of these, and I would demand that they respond. They work for you. They are accountable to you. And in Tennessee, when we had legislation that we felt like just recently threatened our homeschool freedoms, we scheduled a rally event. So if you're in North Carolina and you're a homeschool parent and even a private school parent, and if they continue to proceed forward with this legislation, I would highly consider scheduling a rally day event in opposition to this legislation, and try to bend their ear, attend the committee meetings, schedule appointments with these lawmakers, and do your best to educate them. And I would also, even if there's no legislation in your state that you feel like is currently threatening your freedoms, I would spend a large majority of my time trying to educate your elected officials, your representatives, your lawmakers at the local, state, and national level on why school choice is dangerous to freedoms. What do you want to add into that, Stephanie?
It's going to take a lot of calling, because we conservatives in general we've been known to be the quieter ones.
Mm-hmm.
We've been been pretty happy just sitting down and shutting up.
Yeah.
And this is what it gets us. Our
Mhm.
representative, we're voting on solely on party lines. We have nothing but, like I said, nothing but a bunch of rhinos, with the exception of Mark Robinson in power right now.
Mhm.
And the representatives, they don't talk to any of their constituents at all.
And that's how you know that they're not there to represent the constituents. Because
Yeah.
if they're not talking to the constituents, they don't know how you feel about issues. It's just very frustrating to see this happening. So yes, I agree. Conservatives, true liberty-loving individuals, they're going to have to stand up and speak out.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to get passionate about what we do, and we're going to have to demand that our elected officials listen to the people that put them where they are.
Yep.
And then if they don't, you're going to have to vote them out. But, I would highly, this is what we've done this in the past when there has been legislation, and I'm sure this has been done in North Carolina too, but I would show up, I would get all the homeschoolers together, pick a date, and just go to the Capitol there in North Carolina and flood their offices, obviously peacefully and respectfully. But I would do that to get them to see how many there are of you, and that we are a large number, and that we do vote. That's the thing that I think a lot of these lawmakers don't realize, is that the majority of homeschool families vote.
Yeah, and two, a lot of the problem that I'm seeing in the homeschool groups just for North Carolina now is that these parents think that homeschooling is not supposed to be political. So if anybody mentions anything political, it's, oh no, we're not here to talk. No, homeschooling is political, because that's our freedoms that are getting.
I've said to people before, you might not have an interest in politics, but politics has an interest in you. So no matter if you want to get involved in politics or not, it's going to affect you. Mm-hmm. So you can either be proactive in the fight to maintain and preserve your freedoms, or you can just sit down and allow them to have their way with your family. And there's
you either volunteer for the position, or it's going to volunteer you.
I think I've been placed in that position already. I said years ago, if someone had told me that I would be doing what I'm doing now, I would have said to them, "You've lost your mind. That's insane." And here I am, here I am. And now I'm volunteering to go all across the nation to educate homeschool families on why this is so important. So, obviously, if you followed my Free Your Children page for any length of time, you will see that I'm very passionate about this, because, and I did a seminar at the beginning of the week, and we talked about this in the seminar, and I said, unfortunately, when I was finally educated and I knew, I couldn't just sit there and not do anything with the information that I knew. So when you don't know, the old adage, ignorance is bliss. When you don't know, you don't know. But when you do know, we have to do something with that information. And so, obviously, one of the many missions of Free Your Children is to try to educate parents about why they need to be concerned about these things and getting involved, so that they can continue to preserve their freedoms. And I said this because we have a divide. There's always a divide, political divide. It doesn't matter if you are a Christian homeschooler, if you are a conservative homeschooler, if you are a liberal homeschooler, you're still a homeschooler.
Yep.
And so when I'm fighting for those rights, I'm fighting for all of your rights. So I have said, you don't have to like me. I'm still going to fight for your rights to be able to have the freedom to homeschool. And so, homeschoolers at least need to come together on that front.
Yeah.
To protect their rights to continue to be able to homeschool. Because if the government is telling us how to do it, and what we can and can't do with our own children, that's not freedom.
No, it's not.
So this is just, so what's the timeline? Do you know the status of where these bills currently, there's no date on this NCHEA legislative update. So I don't know if any of this has advanced.
And see, NCHE they're not even encouraging the people who get their newsletters to contact the representatives. They're people who get their email newsletter to contact them.
Oh no.
Yeah. So,
and here's the thing. You don't need an organization to do your work to protect. This needs to be, and it should be, a grassroots movement. Mm-hmm. Don't sit around and expect someone else to do your work for you. They need to hear from the individual families. They need to hear from each family that homeschools as to why they feel like these pieces of legislation that have been introduced are threatening to them. How do you feel like this affects you personally? So yes, we had a similar situation a year or so ago here in Tennessee. Our state organization, one of the chapters didn't want us to discuss school choice with our legislators at a particular event. And we were just passing out information about why we were opposed to school choice. And we did it anyway. Our homeschool group did it anyway, because that was the reason why we were there. We were there to educate our legislators. And we received a wonderful response. We had some wonderful conversations. We even had some of the other representatives that were not our representatives, like they weren't in our district. They happened to hear us speaking to the ones that we had appointments with, because we made appointments. And they came out of their offices and asked us to come into their office and tell them the same thing that we had just said in the office across the hall. So that was very positive to see, at least, that they were interested. So I'm not real fond of organizations that try to deter. And I'm not saying NCHE is doing that. But what I'm saying is, I'm not fond of any organization, no matter who they are, that isn't encouraging parents to get out and speak to their legislators personally and discuss these issues with them. So, if you're a member of NCHE, you can do whatever you want to. You can contact them if that's what you choose to do. But I would also encourage you to contact your legislators personally.
Yeah. Okay. So the dates you were asking about, which one is it? For House Bill 800, the part-time enrollment, if it's effective, it will become effective July 1st, 2023, and apply to request to begin part-time enrollment in the following 2024 to 2025 school year.
Okay.
Let's see, which one is this? The 420, expanding the K through 12 scholarships. The fiscal year appropriations are listed starting with the 2023-2024 school year. So that looks like it'll be July if they do it.
Okay.
The Bill 746, which is additional oversight, that one would go into effect for starting July of this year.
Right.
And let's see, 411, the PSAT AP bill. Where is that one? That would be, it just says the act is effective when it becomes law. Okay. So if that one's getting more push, then it looks like it'll actually go through. But the other four, what is it? The other four, the Opportunity Scholarship looks like, where is section 1?
And it looks like on 746, it is referred to the Committee on Rules, Calendar, and Operations of the House, and that was on 4/19/23. Yep. there's nothing else showing on your North Carolina General Assembly website.
Yeah, and let's see, 665, it looks like it would go into effect. I'm thinking it says in section 2, 2024.
Right. Let's
Start.
see if we find out where this one. Oh, let's see. It's saying House Bill 800. When I put it in on your North Carolina General Assembly, it is saying, all right, there it is right there. It has been referred to the Committee on Education, K through 12, if favorable appropriations, if favorable rules, calendar, and operations of the House. And that was on 4/19.
Yeah.
So your website, because we're at 4/28 now, the website for the North Carolina General Assembly it's not being updated.
No, it's not. And 800 is backed by Republicans, and we've got a majority Republican listing in that right now.
It says the sponsors are Bradford, Willis, T. Brown, Chesser, Clemens, Cotham, Kidwell, and Sossaman. Yep. And that's another thing that I would encourage everyone to do is look at the bill, find out who the sponsors are, and then make phone calls to all those sponsors, then find out what committee it's supposed to be heard in, and then contact every single person on that committee. So it is a lot of work. It takes time to do, but it's worth the time because you are trying to protect your freedoms.
Yeah.
So, in North Carolina, all of you North Carolinians that live there, that homeschool and are in private schools, I really highly encourage you to follow these bills very closely, find out what committees they're going to, make phone calls to all the people on all the committees, make phone calls to the sponsors of the bills, and try to get these bills killed. But, and keep me updated too, because this is what we have to do. We have to make sure that everyone across the nation knows what's going on in legislators, because it's going to affect you. It's going to affect all of us. We don't live under a rock here in the United States. What happens in one part of the country is going to bleed over, into other states. So we have to stay educated about this. And Stephanie, I appreciate you jumping on here. Is there anything, and I'm glad you got on. Yay, I'm proud. We finally got it all worked out. That's just how Facebook land is sometimes. But is there anything that you want to say before we jump off here to people that live in North Carolina that these bills could potentially affect?
If nothing else, stop listening to NCHE and just automatically assuming they're going to handle it all for us, because we have collectively, not everybody, but we have collectively as homeschoolers sat back and let them handle, them and HSLDA handle everything for us for far too long. And this is the basket of mess that we've got.
Yeah, I agree with that. You have to be proactive. You have to do your own legwork and your own groundwork. And of course, Free Your Children seeks to connect true liberty-loving individuals in the United States who are truly seeking to make sure that our freedoms to home educate our children and our parental rights are protected. And, I'm not a lobbyist, so I'm not getting paid to peddle any particular agenda. And I'm not a politician, so there's that. So I don't have to, Lynn Davenport kind of coined this phrase when she was on the show, on my Free Your Children radio show. She said, when you're a politician, you have to dance with the one that brought you.
Yep.
Well, no one's bringing me to dance. So as of right now, I can get on my Free Your Children platform and we can just lay it all out there and put everything out in the open. So that's where we are, and that's what I plan on continuing to do. Someone asked me the other day, and I said, until I go to my grave, that's the plans that I have now, is to continue shedding light on education, because the thing is, our family, we are entering our 20th year of homeschooling. However, our youngest child is only 10. So we our family personally has 8 more years of homeschooling left with her, and then we have grandchildren, and we have 5 kids, so we'll have more grandchildren, I'm certain, at some point. And our grandchildren are being homeschooled, so I'm definitely in this for the long haul. I'm not dancing with anyone because no one's brought me to the dance, so I am here working for all of us that choose to continue to fight for our freedoms and try to preserve those. And I appreciate Stephanie and all the people that work with me across the nation, because we're all fighting for the same thing here.
Yep.
Stephanie's show aired last night on Free Your Children radio show. I will, when it's uploaded to Spotify, I'll drop the link in the comments here, and then I'll make a whole separate post about it over on Free Your Children. So if you didn't watch her show, and we discussed some of this in the show as well. So if you didn't get an opportunity to catch that live last night, I encourage you to go back and listen to it. If you're in North Carolina and you need to connect with Stephanie so you can kind of coordinate to work together to fight against that, and you need to contact me and I can get you in touch with Stephanie, I would be happy to do that. Any parting words you want to give to our listeners before you head off, Stephanie?
I just put my email in the comments, so
right.
it's email me, they can.
Okay.
Stop being quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Politics is not fun, but stop being quiet and speak up before we're not able to speak up anymore.
Amen. Yep, I agree. I think that especially those of us in the South, especially, tend to sometimes not want to be seen as the troublemaker maybe, or the one causing a ruckus. But when your parental freedoms are in jeopardy, it's time to speak up.
Oh, honey, Virginia came out on this one, so
and you can do it respectfully. I mean, it can be done respectfully. I feel like we've always done it respectfully, but you have a voice, and you have to find your voice, and you have to be willing to use your voice, and you have to be willing to connect and work with other people like Free Your Children, who's trying to help you. So keep me in the loop of what's going on in your state. If you have legislation in your state that we need to do a live on, let me know, and we'll do that. If you have groups of individuals in your area of the United States that do not understand why school choice is bad and dangerous to homeschooling and private schools, let me know. I would be happy to attempt to educate them, but that's what we have to do. We have to educate the masses because people just don't understand it. But I don't want to keep everyone on here forever. Thank you, Stephanie, for joining in. North Carolina, wake up. If you're homeschooling in North Carolina, if you have private school kids in North Carolina, wake up. It's time to get to work. You have a lot of work to do. There's a lot of legislation out there that's very concerning, and you need to get busy. You need to get busy making appointments, making phone calls, sending emails, letting your voice be heard, schedule rally days, launch social media campaigns. You need to absolutely, I think in Tennessee here, we almost shut their phone lines down. We had so many people calling in. So, we're the volunteer state. So, I totally encourage you to organize and contact your legislators and tell them that you want these bills killed, that you're not in agreement to any of this and why. And Stephanie, who is in North Carolina, will be glad to help you with that. I will be glad to help you by bringing awareness to it. And I look forward to hearing what you've accomplished. So keep me apprised of how this goes through the process, Stephanie. And as it does so, we can jump back on and give an update.
Sounds good.
Have a great day.
See you later.
Bye-bye.